Hey, Fitzy here, back at it again with another one. A lot of you've asked about it and asked about rusty roofs and drip rails. This roof here was gone, this drip rail was gone, and the entire inner structure at the top of the door opening was gone as well. I made it all with just scrap steel, basic tools, a little metal brake. I did use a shrinker stretcher on it, but it's just a simple little process of how I go about repairing rust like this. And I'm going to walk you through it here now, so stick around. All right, it's a new day and new rust. I went ahead and I had some spots down here where there were plug welded. I went ahead and welded them on because I wanted to finish off everything as I was coming around the car to get over to here. Okay, on this side here, if you haven't followed me, I just done the other side, done a lot of rust repair and everything on the other side. 20 odd patches in the last video. I'm here now. All I got left to do is this section here on this main shell, and then I can get it ready for primer. I have one hole right here. I'm not going to go into detail to it. I'm just going to grind it off. I'll show you a couple pictures of it as I'm making the piece, and I'm not going to get into it. But this one up here is a little bit more tricky. I got to replace this entire section here from about here right on back to pretty well the end of it. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm not going to cut this out. First thing everybody wants to do is, okay, let's cut all the rust out. And it cuts all the rust out of the car. No, leave that alone for now. I'm going to use this for templates. I'm going to make a little template for it, and I'm going to make a piece for it, have it so it fits down there and is where I want it to be before I go and cut any of this out of this, okay? I'm going to go extra big. I'm going to make it longer, all that type of stuff. Clean all this off. I'm going to do this in another separate piece here and then do this in one long strip, right? So probably what I'll end up doing is I'll clean this off, blow all this out, and do this section here first and have it done. But before we get started on that, I'm going to get this one done. So let's get started. There it is, all welded up and grinded up. You see me start off with a large piece, and I was only worried about the lower section welding up down here, and then I came up so far to the side, then I had to trim this up, and then I cut it across here on an angle and tap this back so I can actually weld this edge. Then I melted it right in there so I can actually get some penetration from the back side, and then I just grind dressed it. Pretty simple and quick. It's very hard to look at small patches and try to make a small patch. Always start with something big and just work your way into it, and then trim it up as you're going. Alright, that's done. Let's move on to the fun part. So I went ahead and I just grinded all the lead out of there using the grinder, just 24 grit. Okay, then I went ahead and cut that piece out there. So I'm just going to remove it same as I did the other side. And you can see the build-up of rust, look. All that's trapped inside behind there. This side don't seem to be as bad as the other side. Hold on to that. I'm going to go ahead now, clean all this up here and blow it out and see how bad this end piece is. See if I'm going to have to cut this off as well and get ready to make a piece to go there. So there we have it. I got it all cleaned up. This side is way better than the other side. I tried welding here on the side, try to save this little piece, and it's full of holes. It was very thin, so I cut it back there. It's nice and solid on the back side of that there now. So I'm going to do this one a bit different. I'm going to put the end in it first. Weld down here, weld this up across here, and I'm going to shape this here. And I'm going to build a full piece that'll come right down over this here. That'll go right to this one here. Unlike the other side, I'll put a strip in there. I'm going to come right on down to here and then come up and around here and weld it on this corner edge here. And am I going to do it that way? No, I want to weld this corner edge on the inside. So nope, I'm going to make this piece first. Then I'm going to put this the same as the other side. Okay, let's get that done. I went ahead and I cut out a piece, a little bit too wide, a little bit too long, and I trimmed it up so that it actually fit the edge of it. And I played around with just laying it placed there, and it doesn't want to fit because that's a full crown piece there that rocks that way and it rocks this way. I put a little roll in it, and it don't seem to be, I figured I might get away with it because it's such a short piece. But I'm still going to have to work this one like I did the other one. I'm going to use the ring on it now, tap it in here, go over to the English wheel over there, and shape it up some, and get this to flow up around here better. This is all I'm doing. I got the little ring here. I'll just take the round part of the ball peen, just hammer down into it. This is all it looks like, okay? When you hammer it, it looks rough. A little dents in it. But you can see that it's got a curvature gone into it now. Okay, as rough as that is. I'll turn around now and I'll play with that. I'll hammer that onto the curved section of the dolly here. Flatten it out, then I'll go over the English wheel and run it through that and get some shape to it. So here's what I come up with. You see the little crown on it? Going back through and I worked it. I dollied it. Okay? You see the marks on the back? You can actually see in the light there. See the marks that I put on it? Flipped it over and around through the English wheel, smoothened it out. So, that's it. Now I got it laid up in place there now, and I got it fitting where I like it. And I'm going to trim this off along there now to get it fitting better. So I got this fit in place. I got it overlapped down here, fitting up along here. Got a nice roll on the top edge. And along there, I got 2 pairs of vice grips put on it just to hold it because it's got a little bit of a spring to it. I went ahead and took the piece that I cut off the back of this here and I trimmed it up and filed it so that it actually fits there like so. So I'm going to go ahead now and set that up in place there and get that welded on so I can weld the back side of it and do a nice job dressing that corner. So after trimming it up, I got the piece welded on and grind it inside and out there so that entire piece there fits right nice. It's got a nice flow to it. Okay, I got the pieces and I went and marked it, and you can see there I'm leaving a little bit of overlap, same as the other side. I know I'm going to have problems with welding this stuff, so I don't want to get in there doing a cut and butt across here because I know I'm going to end up blowing holes in here everywhere. So I'm going to do a little bit of an overlap here. There's going to be a butt weld here and a butt weld here and a butt weld down here, and then I'll cut this to fit after, and same with down here. This will be all butt welded, and then this will be an overlap joint down here that'll actually weld to this edge here. So it'll fit in like so. As you can see, fits pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead now and get this here all painted and get the back side of that all painted. It's already got that coating on it, but I figure I'll leave that on at this time because it's a good protective coating, and I'll get that there painted. Let that dry and then weld that in. So I got that all welded up, grinded up, and dressed and finished. All up around the corner here is all done. I basically welded in this corner here the same way as I done before. Put a lot of heat in it and then grind it off so I had lots of penetration there. And welded it down across here, and up across top was a lap weld here, and there was a lap weld down here. Now it's up here is butt welded. It all fits pretty good. It do have some tuck going on. If you take that there and run that down over that, you can actually see that it did tuck down on me. Down on the bottom side, it came out pretty good, as you can see, right? I'm pleased with it. That's good enough for that. We got that straightened away. It's the same process as what I did on the other side. I ended up welding it, grinding it, welding it again because I wanted to taper it back a bit on this top side edge because where I overlapped it down here, I had to weld it again, then touch up a few spots and grind it off again, right? Anyway, okay, so I got this section done. We got one more spot to do, and that's this drip rail, okay? This drip rail is very, very tedious. We got a bunch of things going on. As you can see, I got holes all down along here, okay? Going along here, there's more holes in through here. So she's basically gone from about right here, right back to here. So we'll say to here, okay? Now, the nicest thing about this, none of it is above the roll, so I can keep this below the roll. It'd probably be nicer just to keep it in the roll itself, go through this area here. So put a little bit of roll on it and then join it through here. Got a couple of things going on. It's not perfectly straight. If you look down that there, that has this sort of a hill going on, okay? So you got to take that into consideration of what you're doing. You can do this a couple of ways. If you had a bead roller with a step die on it. You could probably do it that way, but I'm just going to do it in a metal brake. I've played around metal over the years, and I found that when you get into small pieces, it's very easy to manipulate the way it's shaped. You got to size things up before you get started. Most people would take this here now and start cutting all the rust out of it. I'm not going to touch a thing here. I want to get this piece made first and use this for my fitment, because once you start cutting stuff out, you're going to lose where everything's got to go. I got to make sure that this here stays in the same location, that, you know, when I look down the side of it, as you can see, it is straight, going down the side of it this way here. And the only piece of metal that I won't be removing is this section here. Now, I know for a fact when I look at this here, that this here and this here is parallel. Okay, so I know that my drip rail is going to be parallel to that. And I got an idea roughly about where it's got to be in junction to, because I'm going to leave this section here because that's a factory join there, okay? And my plan is I'm going to replace this section of the drip rail on the outside here because I got holes in here that I got to replace, okay? A lot of you asked about this here, and you got to just sit back and size things up, okay? I have a rough skin, okay? It's joined on in through here. It's welded down through here. So that's where that's joined on. Now this drip rail goes in and kicks up. I know that because I've done the other side and you can see it. And that's spot welded in through here. Then this piece here is just a full section that goes down and wraps right up and around the roof underneath this panel here. So all that got to be done, and the drip rail welds to that, and then this welds to this. So you got to build, I'm going to have to build one section in here, the drip rail, and the roof section, okay? That's the way that's going to have to be built. So I got 3 sections I got to build. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to start here. I'm going to make this piece here. I'm just going to get a random piece of steel now, cut it out so wide. And what I went and did is I made this, okay? This is my template. That falls down side there. And that's the shape that I want it, okay? So there's my template. I'm going to cut out a big piece, a large piece. I only need about this much of it, because when you see that there is laid there, I only need about this much of this metal. But it's very hard to work with a small piece like that in a metal brake. And the one that I got especially, because mine got a 3/4 inch gap on the bottom of it. So I'm going to leave an inch on the bottom here, and I'm going to leave probably 2 inches on the top here, and bend up a piece of metal, and then I'll cut it to fit this here, go along here, and then I'm going to work on shaping it. But for now, not going to overthink this, because they're saying, well, how are you going to do this and how are you going to do that? Don't think about that. All I got to do first is get a piece of metal shaped like that. That's our first thing we're going to do. I went over for my steel and I found a piece and I measured up. I figured roughly 3.5 inches give me lots of leeway. I was only going to be about this big when it's all said and done, but I want some room to work with this when I don't do the bends. And I measured it up really long, which is roughly about 40 inches. I never talked about it in the last video. This is 18 gauge metal, okay, that I'm using. And this is the stuff I like to work with. It's heavier than most, and I'm putting it on a car that's got lighter metal. This here is a rough section that I took off the car on the other side. And there it is there, look. 22 gauge metal, okay? It's extremely thin. I don't like working with it at all, okay? It is absolutely horrible. And like this is 18, what I got here, and that's 22. And why do I do that? Because it gives me room to grind, okay? If you put 22 gauge metal with this here and start grinding it, you're going to be blowing a hole, burning holes in it everywhere, because I do have problems when I'm grinding this here. I got to watch touching this metal, because when I do touch it, it doesn't take much, because I use a coarse 24 grit and I shouldn't be using it. I should be using like a 36 or even a 40 to try to sand most of this down, a flat wheel of some sort. But I've been so used to using 40 grit or 24 grit over the years, I just got into it, and I've had to catch myself a few times actually grinding this here too much and then having to re-weld spots again, like on corners and edges and stuff like that. But yeah, it's all 22 gauge metal. So I got the piece marked out here, and I'll cut that out now and strip all the paint off it and get it ready to put it in the metal brake. So I went ahead, I cleaned up the piece of metal, I cut it out, cleaned it up, got it ready. Now I got to start putting the bends in it. All I'm going to do the first one, because this will be the bottom bend, I'm going to leave an inch on of that there so I can trim it off after the fact. And I like doing that for the simple fact it gives a strength to it. It's kind of hard to make this bend, a little tiny bend like that in my brake. So I'm going to put it in the brake and I'm going to bend 1 inch, and I'm going to hammer it in the vise, because it will have a roll to it, but I want to put a sharp edge into it so it'll be tighter on the bend, and I have to use the hammer to do that. So I'll go ahead and I'll get that done. Now, I never really measured it. I'm going to eyeball this. You can probably measure off an inch if you want. But it's going to be trimmed anyway. I just want to make sure that it's parallel to the piece I got there. So it will go from there. Now, this 18 gauge is not the easiest to bend. It can be tricky sometimes. As you can see. Now I'm going to take the hammer now, and I'm going to sharpen up this edge. Now I'm going to do that. Is I'm going to flip it over, like so, take it down, and use the face of it to sharpen it up. Being 18 gauge, it got a tendency to put a large roll in a long strip. And if you look along here, you can see the way I got it hammered. And you come over here and you can see how big the roll is, see? So I'm hammering it down to a smaller roll right here because I want to have a tight lip on the bottom side of it. So I'm going to go ahead now, finish hammering this down and have this piece ready to go. And I got that hammer down. All I did is I pulled it out and I measured it off of this here. That's the second bend there. So I've done that on the other end. And now I'm going to bend that up this way. Well, that's going to end up straightening this out a small bit, but that's the reason why I got the sharp edge put on it. I can hammer it back later on, but I want to get this rolled up here first. Each time I roll it, it puts a large roll on it like so, and I'll come back here on the bench and I'll hammer it down to where I want it to be. I want it to be like there, and you can see that's the way that will go, like that, onto that section there. And I'm going to work my way along that, and I'll end up putting in the brake again and giving it another tweak. I'm just trying to sharpen up this edge, is all I'm trying to do. You see me hammering right there. What I'm doing is I'm tightening up the lip, okay? I'm making this one smaller and I'm making this one smaller because they weren't exactly where I want them to be for the actual size that I want. When I done the roll, these were too big. I'll show you exactly what I was doing. I got a scrap piece of steel here and now I got a line put on it, okay? See that mark I got put on it? I'm going to bend this up with a brake and I'm going to show you what I was doing. Now I got a piece of metal bent up here and you can see the line, okay? It's on the bottom part of the roll, okay? Focus, there you go. It's on the bottom part of the roll. Now the problem I got is I would like to have that on the top part of the roll. All I'm doing is I'm taking this here, I'm going to hammer on the side that I want to bring it up to, okay? I got it brought to the top of the line now. Roll. All this I flatten out the top side. I'm making this shorter here. Okay? That's what I'm trying to do, is shorten up this area here. So I tap this down, flattens it down, I start rolling it over the edge as I'm going. I got a line to go by. So when I got that there, I rolls it over and I just move the edge up. It's not a big difference in doing it, but it helps a lot when you got, sometimes you'll make bends and you'll put one on this side of the line and you make the other bend on the other side of the line, but when you're finished, your distance between them are too wide now, so you shorten them up, and this is how you can shorten them up. So you can see here where I was doing it on these panels here. Now, one thing I like about this 18 gauge is that you can really mark it up, and it's very hard to see. So there's the other side there. You can't even see where I beat on this side here, okay? And where I pound that, you can see actually in the light there, you can actually see where I tweaked it over the line, okay? I was trying to make this section here smaller. It was too big, and then I had to roll this edge, did the same thing up here. I had to flatten up this edge here, you can see the marks in it. And you flip it over, right? You can see the little edge on it, okay? The panel is starting to take a shape, starting to curve, okay? Because I was actually stretching the metal is what I was doing. And now it's actually stretched, okay? Now that I got the bead where I want it, and I got the piece there, now I'm gonna start trimming this up, okay? A lot of you guys like watching me doing this here are thinking too far ahead. You're probably looking at it and saying, but Tony, what's gonna happen here? How come this is here? You're doing this here, but this is gonna happen, and no, I don't think about that. All I do is think about what I'm trying to produce. I'm trying to produce a piece of metal that got this bead in it, okay? That bead is the edge of my roof, and I got it there now. So now I'm going to start trimming this piece up to fit the roof so that it fits down the side of it, and then I'm going to shape it this way. I'm going to trim it and shape it so it goes this way. Okay, I went ahead and I trimmed that off, and I got that trimmed off, and I come over here and I fit it down into the roof, okay? Made sure that it fits down there nice and whatnot. And then you're going to turn around here and go, oh, Tony, but it's not straight. What are you going to do there? What are you going to do? No, I'm not worried about that right yet. Okay? Calm down, by one step at a time. The next thing I'm going to do here now is I got this bead here comes up, and I measured up to the roll. Okay, the roll goes around here, and I give myself about 1.25 inches from here up to here. I'm going to do the same thing with this now. I'm going to measure up from here, 1.25 inches, and cut it off. So here's what you got now, okay? I got it trimmed off, and I got the piece made up. That's the actual lip there. I still got to do some more rolled edges and stuff like that. I'm not going to do that yet. I got to get it to the shape of the roof first. It's a lot easier to start with a bigger piece to make this. You try to make this little tiny piece like this here, with these little bends in it trying to shape it, you will have this mangled trying to get the shape to it. Now I got it. It's pretty good there now. I need this rolled anyway. This side here now is flexible enough that it'll go out of it if it need be, see? Because there's no lip on this end over here. What I need to do now is I got to get this here to curve this way. But I also want to figure out the overall length. Now, every time I go hammer form and stuff, I always find the last ½ inch of it is always, like it'll go along here and it'll go like that on me. So I'm going to trim this off here and then find out what I'm going to do so I can cut this end off it. Because this does the same thing too. I don't know why. It's so easy to work the end of the metal that you stretch it. And what it ends up doing is the end of this here comes along here and you stretches everything out here. And by cutting it off, you're back into the metal that's the same as the rest of it. So I'll go over, I'll trim this side off, and go over and fit it. Okay, so I got it cut off to roughly where I want it to be. But you can see that it's high there. It sits there nice. And then, of course, it's high up here. So this whole panel now has got to be curved this way. So how are you going to do that? Well, what I'm planning on doing is I'm going to take this section of the panel here and put it in the stretcher, okay? And I'm going to stretch it along here and open this up, and it'll want to turn the rest of the panel, okay? There you can see what happens. It actually turns the actual panel. Over here you can see it, see? Now I still got to work it some more, get it fitting a bit better than that. So I'm going to play with that a bit more and getting that to where I'm happy with it. And get ready to move on to the next section. So there, I'm happy with that. I got it all fitting there now pretty good. It's overlapped over everything. You can see it flows to the drip rail and everything. And this is basically all you got. It's this panel here, and you can actually look down it, and you can see the curvature that's gone on that. All it does is I stretch the upper lip of it. Right. So now that I got that made, so I got my drip rail figured out. I went ahead and I marked it here so I know exactly where it's to when I cuts everything up. I continuously return that back to that position there. What I'm going to do here next now is I'm going to work on getting this bottom thing straightened away. She's gone from here, which there's a join right here in the panel, over to here where there's a join in the panel, okay? All the section in the middle is there. Well, what I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to blindly cut through all that and cut that right out of there, right through there and right through there, and get rid of that section there and see what we're up against. Because I'm going to trim this back here after the fact when it gets going here now, but I'm only going to cut out what I got to cut out so I can actually see what's going on in behind it. And there you go, more buildup of rust in there. So I'm going to blow that out. I cut it out of the way. It's in better shape than I thought it was. But you can actually see here, if you look closely at it, you actually see the layers. The drip rail runs in around and goes down to here. That's one piece. Then the roof runs over and runs down and meets on the top of this piece here, or the inner structure do. And then the roof skin goes down top of that. So there's 3 layers right here, okay? So I got this figured out now that I got to make the drip rail first. And then I got to make the roof section second, and then put the roof skin on after. So I'm going to clean all this up here now, blow all this off. I'm going to cut this back a little bit more, lay the panel in place and see where I can mark it to cut it out, and get ready to clean this much of it off and start figuring out what way I'm going to make pieces. So I went ahead and I cut everything back and I cleaned everything up to how I thought everything should be. What I got to do is I got to build this lower section here. That'll come from here, come up, come out, and come up, and that'll be the actual edge of the lip for the drip rail. Okay, once that's made, I can install that and weld that in place. Then I got one that comes from here, that'll come down, got a little bump in it here, and come straight out, and that will weld to the top of the bottom one. All right? Then once that's done, then I can put the outer skin on top of it. It seems pretty well straightforward. I got to check and see how much of a crown it needs to be in it. But all I'm going to do first here now is I'm going to make all the individual pieces that I got to make. Get it all ready so I can get it all painted and let it dry so that I can start welding it all together. So first piece I'm going to make is this lower section down here. I'm going to make that first. But as you can see here now, it looked like a big daunting task. But as it's coming along here now, you're starting to see, okay, this is how it's putting together. So I'm not worried about nothing else now. All I'm worried about is this little piece of metal here, making that shape and making a piece that's long enough that'll fit there. And I'll work that to make that fit there. Oh, one quick thing. You see where I got this cut off here? Right here, I just chopped right down through. Don't ever be afraid to cut through good metal like this here. If you got to get access in here to get a panel, this can all be welded up again after the fact. But I cut right on down through that, right in through there, so I can cut this section out here. But I left this here alone because I'm saving this piece here, because I'm going to butt up against this and go on and continue on with the way the drip rail is supposed to be on these. So I just want to put that out. You'll be trying to figure out now how would you cut that in there, trim it all out. Don't ever be afraid to just chop right that off, right on and through there, so you can get at something. So cut out a piece of metal. It's too wide, it's too long, okay? What I'm going to do here now, my drip rail on it is going to be only about 1/4 of an inch high. But I'm going to not worry about that right now, and I'm going to give it about 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch. I'm going to bend this at a 90 and sharpen it right up, same way I did the other one. I'm going to use the in the brake. I'm going to sharpen it up. and that'll be my first bend. I'm going to start from the top and work my way down to the bottom so I can actually work on the bends and get everything fitting. But I'm not going to worry about the thickness of the drip. Right here is on top about the thickness. See this here? I'm going to build one here now, and I'm going to come up a bit higher here. I can trim that after the fact. It's a lot easier to remove metal than it is to try to cut this perfect now and bend it and then find out it's too short here and whatnot, right? So I'm going to cut it, leave it long, and then I'll trim it after. Bent it on a 90, and now I got it clamped in the vise. As you can see here, all I'm doing is clamping in the vise, and I hammers it across here and flatten it out like right here. That way I'll get a nice crisp sharp edge on the corner. So I got the piece made, and I got it bent up, and I sharpened the edge on it, so I got a nice crisp edge on it. Okay, so that's my first. That will be like this here. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm just going to work in through, measure in, and take each individual bend, and bend this piece down to here, and have it so that it fits to this here. All I'm doing is I get my measurements. I got a set calipers, and I'm just going to measure that up there, get it where I want it. I'll do it in each individual one. I'll do this bend first, then I'll do the second bend, then I'll do the third bend if need be. So I got the measurement here now. Go over, transfer that onto the piece of tin, and bend it in the brake. Okay, there's the first trial fit. As you can see, I bent it up. It's really long here on the outside edge now, and I got it lined up on this end, down underneath. And what I did is I clamped it in place, and then I scribed the back side of it so I can see where this here is going to end in here, so I can trim that off. I don't know if I'm going to trim it off or I'm going to bend it so I can slide it in over the top of this piece in here, just to give me something that I can weld to, okay? Instead of having to fill up a gap there, because I don't like welding corners open like that. If I can put something in there, I prefer to do it that way. So I'm going to size that up now, probably bend that up, and make the final bend on it, and get that fitting into where I want to get it going. So I'm here now, and I got it scribed on the inside. When I got done, I got a piece of angle iron clamped to the bench over the line itself. And I'm on this side of the line a small bit. What I'm going to do here now is I'm going to take the grinder, and I'm going to scribe that there along there. I'm not going to cut through it, I'm just going to scribe it so I can get a nice sharp bend on it to bend it. And then I'll trim it up, because I want to get a corner on that I can slide in above the thing, so I got something to weld to. So trying to bend this in a brake, the piece is too small first of all, and whereas 18 gauge, it'll just put a big roll on it, but I want a nice sharp edge on it. So I'm going to show you now. I'm just going to run the grinder through there, and then bend that over. And see, you can see there now what I got done. There's the bent edge I put in there. Now it'll actually fit nice to the thing. I'll just trim that off so I don't have all that 3/4 of an inch there, and I'll just leave probably 1/8 of an inch or so there, just enough so I got something that I can weld to on that edge. Instead of having two straight edges and then trying to weld through, it'll blow through this bottom stuff. At least now when it starts to blow through, it'll grab on the 18 gauge. And so now that one piece there is pretty well ready to go, other than a trim up. And I'll do this trim after the fact, but I'm going to weld it all in place before I does that. So now I'm going to go ahead now and I'll make the upper piece. So I went ahead and I trimmed it off, and you can see here now what I got done. Just a little crisp edge on it, a little roll edge on the end of it. That's the way it's shaped, the entire piece. Okay. Now here's sizing things up. I gotta make this upper section, but I'm sizing things up and I'm saying, Tony, why don't you just install the lower section and the drip rail and have it done? Because I can still get in there with paint and everything after the fact, and it'd be nice to have all this much welded in so I can drown it all with paint that way, and then I can make this cap piece to go on top of it. I can trim up this outside, have all that done. So I'm going to go ahead now, fit this up in place, and start out here on the drip rail side, and start tack welding in place and weld my edges along here first. Get them welded, and then I'm going to work on basically shoving something down behind here and push that up against that so I can weld that across there. All I did is I tack welded my edges on either side once I got it fitted, and then I worked the bottom down. So this here was flush, and this was flush over here, and I put a couple of tacks on that so I got there straightened away. And this is all lined up now, so you can see that there. So what I'll do now is I'll just go ahead, I'll weld this down along here, and up along here. I should be able to blow some heat into this because it's a structural piece. I haven't got to worry too much about warpage, right? So I'll control it. I won't get too carried away with it now on you, but I'll just turn around, go ahead now and get that all welded up. There it is, all welded in. All along there. I faded in the lips here, because this fades in and fades out that way on this side. Same with over here, fades in, fades out here. Then it cuts off straight there. All I got left to do now is just trim this off, and I have the bottom section done. So no more holes going up through there. Flows nice with the rest of it. Nice rolled edge on it where I had the piece on behind. I had lots of meat there to weld to. So I got that all done, all dressed. So I'm just going to trim this off now. Have this done, dress this up, then I'll have my lips back, my drip rail back, and if you look down the side of her, it looks good. That's one piece pretty well glued up. Get this trimmed off now. Now when you're cutting this stuff off, don't go cutting it straight off flush, okay? Cut it up a little small bit above it, and then dress it with the grinder. And just take your time creeping up on it, instead of turning around just trying to whip it right off, because you'll end up having all kinds of headaches if you end up cutting too much off. I'll show you in a minute if I does it here. Anyway, let's see if I get that cut off straight. All I did is I took some 3/4 tape and I folded over the edge, put it up there, and you can actually see the width of it there. And then I come along here and just kept adding tape to it till I actually got a lip where I thought was the right height. And you can see when that comes down, it comes that width there. So it's a little bit high there. I'm going to trim that right along the tape line there now. Get that out of the way, peel it off, and then dress it up with a grinder. So there it is, the lip all trimmed off. See? Has a little dip in it there like the other side. And I can run my finger along it there now, and it got a little dip in her there. It runs off the front. And now I got to put this piece in there next, or I can make the piece up for that. But all the bottom is nice now. There's no holes going through here no more. All that's fixed. So now I'm going to move on and get this piece made up, ready to go. So I can weld that piece in. So I went ahead and I bent up. This is the simple little piece bent on a 90. I went and left the coating on the outside edge and on this edge here, because that's like a powder coating, and I'm going to leave that on and weld onto that there. So that way that'll be the protective coating on the bottom. That'll give it more protection against rust, because this spot here is what's going to rust in here, right? That's what rusted before. I'm ready now to the point that'll just fit down inside there. That'll spot well on there, and it'll overlap up here. There's lots of room in there, and it's in behind the panel. I'm not going to fool around doing like a cut and butt or nothing like that. You're not going to see it, because when the other panel goes out over the side, that's going to be inside and give it more strength. So it's going to be just welded across the top there, down around here. I got it cut off so it can be butt down here and butt welded down here so the heights are the same. And then I'll plug weld it along there. But before I do that, I got to paint everything in there. And before I paint that, I'm going to go ahead now and clean all this off and see what I got behind that and get that prepped and ready so I can actually put the 2 panels on, and I'll have it so that when I go painting this here, now I'll paint it all. This is what I was talking about earlier. Right here now, I need to cut this off here. You can try to get in there and fool around with it and cut it. This is all I'm going to do. That's all I'll do to cut it out. I can always weld that up again. Now don't that look lovely? Holy bless it. I'm going to go ahead now, clean all the rest of this up now and get this ready for so I can paint it. So I got it all cleaned up in there. I just turned around, grind the head off a few spot welds that were down through here and peel up that piece there. Just took my time cleaning it up. So I got that all cleaned up down through there. I went and turned around then and I trimmed this up this piece so it'll fit down there better. Okay. I got that set up there now. So that fits in there. I got a trim back so it can be butt welded up here in this corner. And it'll be a slight overlap right here. Not a lot, but a slight overlap. Because I'm right on the rolled edge. Should be good there. Same with back here. Just a slight overlap on the top side. And there's a butt weld here and a butt weld here. And then I went and put a couple of little marks. You can see where I cut the little holes in them. That's where I got to put the spot welds too. Down to the bottom. They're always tricky to do. So I got it all ready there now to put together. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put lots of paint in here and drown all this in paint and paint the back side of this and let that dry, and then I can install it. Okay, first thing I'm going to do is put that inside piece in first. I got it laid in place there. I'm going to mark it across here and just knock a bit of paint off it. Same here, mark where all the spot welds are too. And I'm going to grind the paint off it there. I don't like welding with the paint. The weld through primers, to me, I do the same thing with it. It was weld through primers. I don't like welding to that stuff. I've always had troubles with it in the past. Some people have some luck with it. I just never had, and I don't trust it. So I just does it this way. So I'll get this cleaned up now and get that ready to weld in. So here's all I got done. You can see I marked the spots and I just hit them with the grinder. Just knocked off the little spot where spot will go. And then I grinded off the paint here. So I'm just going to take this piece here now. And I'm going to lay it in place here. Put it in where it's supposed to go. There we go. Clamp that in place there now. And I'm going to tack weld it on there. And I'm just going to run a bead along there. There's lots of room there. I'm not too concerned about flush mounting or anything like that. Because a piece goes over the top of this. And you'll never see it. So I'm going to get that clamped in place there now. And get that welded in. I got that all grinded off, so that's done. All grinded off the spot welds down here, so it's nice and flat again. So that's back to normal again. So now I got one more piece to put on. I gotta clean that up there now so I can weld it on there and get that ready to install there. Same process as before. I marked all my spot weld spots and then I grinded them all off. I cleaned off this edge where I had all this painted in here. There's paint on it. So now I'm ready now to install that piece. I'm gonna install that piece and get a clamp in place. So I got it clamped in place. And the trick with a lot of these, a lot of times I talk about starting in the middle and working your way out. The problem I got with this is this little bead, okay? What I'm biggest concern is getting this bead to flow to this bead here, getting this transition looking good, getting it looking good on this edge here, because this is where it's going to matter here. Up here, it really don't matter because I'm overlapping it and it's not a roll, so I can get away with it up there. Same with down on this end here, okay? And I got the same problem here. I got to line up all these here. What I got done, I got it clamped in a few spots. This is fitting really tight here. It's pretty well where it should be. I'm going to get these two ends straightened away on either end, and hopefully it doesn't bow up on me. And then I'm going to start welding across the top side here, right? I do that for the simple fact that if I weld across the top first, show you back here better. If I weld across the top of here first and I start working this down here, this is just going to want to move. I want this to move where I want it to line up with this. So I may need this to move up, or I may need it to move down, okay? If I welded this here, I won't be able to move it after. So I'm going to manipulate this here, start from the bottom, tack weld it along here, and start working my way up around this roll. I want this little transition line here to line up with the other one, okay? So I got a nice transition through there, and then I get this corner. I got this cut to fit here up to about right here. That's all cut to fit, and there's an overlap, and I got the same thing done on the other side. So I'm going to go ahead now and start welding this in. So I went ahead and I got this end welded up, and I got the other end welded up as well. I concentrate on getting these body lines to line up here. Now, if you watched in the video and you saw me doing it, you notice how hard this is. This stuff here is 22 gauge, this here is 18 gauge. I had a hard time welding this here. I had to go and turn the welder right down in order to try to weld it. It was just start blowing holes, and I got a big section right here that I blew holes in, so I just had to weld it all up solid. You could be at that all day. That's the reason why I was not fussy on doing any butt welding up here. If this was a later car, 60s car, something like that, that would have had like 19 gauge metal in it, and I probably would have done the cotton bottle on them edges there. But I'm very concerned about the problems I'm having with the blow through, because it just happens, and you can see it when you're welding it that it just is very, very thin. But you see how I just on the fast trigger, just touching it lightly with the welds. And all I'm doing is I'm trying to build up around the outside of the hole that I got blown in it. And I just tap it, tap it, tap it, let it cool, let the redness go out of it, and then weld it up again. And just keep going like that. If you keep chasing it with a lot of heat in it, you'll be over here somewhere still welding it up, okay? Just got to take your time with it. So I'm going to go ahead now. I got these done before it does anything else. I'm going to go ahead and grind these up and get these here so I'm happy with them. And then I'm going to go ahead and weld the lip in here first, because I think if I don't weld this first and I weld this up here, this is going to want to move in and out. And I got a nice seam, nice parallel line going along that there now. So I might have to push some of it out a little small bit or whatnot. I'm going to measure it up down here and see where it's to, and then just judge myself accordingly along there. And then get them welded up. And that way then I can start on the top. But let's get this grinded up first. So you see me there, got it all welded up, played around with it, I grinded it all down. You can see the transition line there. I'm in my own light. And I'm right where I gotta be, is where I gotta be. You can see the transition line coming along here. Okay, it works out pretty good there. Then I went ahead and tack welded it on in the drip rail itself there. Got it welded on in there. All I got left to do now is weld it across the top. Okay, and this in here is done the same way as well. It's a bit tricky. You see me what I'm doing here. I'm finishing off everything as I'm going. I'm not welding the whole patch in and then trying to do it. I just want to finish everything to see what everything is like, to hope to be happy with it before I solid weld it across here. Because if I runs into any issues, I can always take it off it in. But it's not fully welded in. But I got it all welded on there, on the bottom side. It's a good lip on it there now. There's something good from here. Little belt line looks right nice going along there. So what I'm going to do here now is I'm going to go ahead, take my time now, weld every inch, every half inch, let it cool down, come back. This is all overlapped here now, so that's all that's going to be. There's a transition here, so I should be able to flow that nicely into that there, and you won't be able to notice it as much. So I'm going to go ahead now and get that welded up. So I got it all welded up, all on there now. I got it cooled off a bit there. No warpage there at all. Nope, no. That's good. So now what I got to do now is all I got to do is grind this off. I'm going to have to grind this off, I'd say, and I'm probably going to have to weld it along the edge again just to get the nice taper on it. I'll see what it's like when I get that grinded off the first time and have a look at it. So I'm going to go ahead now and get all this grinded down to finish this off. So this is after just grinding it off the first time, okay? You can see there, you can still see just welds going up along them when you hold it up against it. You can see where there's an overlap weld there, right? Now you could leave that like that if you want to. The transition is really good, okay? Going from one to the other, because it's on a curvature there. You could just fiberglass that and fill it or whatever. I'm going to run another bead along it just to try to close it up a small bit and have it mostly metal there. Around there. It's just, I don't know, it's just the way I like the look of it. I'm not fussy on just having just a simple little lap weld. This here will be perfect. There's nothing wrong with it. There's not a thing wrong with it. I'm just here playing with it now because I'm enjoying playing with this here now, because it was a daunting task to take on to replace something like that. I've after doing a few of these over the years and done the same process over many times. So sometimes I've replaced drip rails and took them off of other cars and welded them on the cars. I used them that way. I've took these sections out of other cars with a little bead in them. Like a lot of vinyl top cars, you find the panels are really bad on them, okay? It takes the vinyl top off them. This is where they gets rusty, okay? And he rots out. So like you come across a 4-door, 2-door, or 4-door sedan sometimes, which has had the same roof line as a 2-door. You can actually cut sections out, or even if you had a good roof, take the entire roof skin off it and replace it with. There's a number of different ways. The same process works for like the front of a pickup truck up here in front with the curvatures. You would make it all. If you noticed, this piece here was the first piece I made. I never cut nothing out of the roof itself. I made this piece first. It's the last piece I'm putting on, okay? It would be whole the same way if you were doing like a Ford truck along the front of the roof there. I'd make the outer section first. It's a bit more trickier because you got to make the curvature on the front and the little lip on the bottom, so you'd make that in 2 pieces. And once you get that whole panel made, then you can go ahead and remove the lip and clean it all up and whatnot. In the case of this one here, we actually had no lip, so I had to make all that as well. Everything in behind it was all gone. So I had to actually make the drip rail itself, and it's a pretty simple one because this got a little a plastic cover that goes on over it, so, and it had little divot ends in it and little cuts and everything from the factory. So I left them there. I wasn't too concerned about making it perfectly straight because I'm going to be putting a little molding back on it again anyway. So I'm going to go ahead now and get this stuff here welded up and grind it up and come back and show you what it looks like. I talked about going back and re-welding again. I want to show you exactly what I'm doing. If you look here, you can actually see this is the original weld, okay? And there's the edge of the weld. What I'm doing is I'm welding on this side of the weld. I'm welding next to it, okay? I'm not welding it on it or anything like that. I'm welding right next to the weld. I'm filling up that little tiny divot end that's right there is all I'm doing so I can blend it back. Now, there's still going to be a small line there when it's done this time here. I'm going to leave it like that. I just wanted to fill most of it in as much as I possibly can. So it was just something I do. I like to try to leave a nice finish on things like that. So when the metal work is done, it looks presentable looking. It's very unusual for me to be doing like a lap weld, but in the case of this car here, it's almost a must because this is extremely thin on this roof, and I'm afraid I'm going to warp all this up if I cut it. So I'm going to go finish this off, and I'll get it all grinded up. So there it is, all grinded up again. If you look at it there, there's a real nice transition there now. It's all gone. There's still some spots over here. I'm not going to worry about them. You can see there's still, I can probably want to run another beetle on that there, just there and there. It's only a couple of spots. I'm not going to bother. Back here you can see a scattered little spot. But for the most part, it's all pretty good because of the transition and everything. Everything is nice and straight along there. Okay, got the nice bead along it again. Flows into the original one again. So it's a simple little process. But you really got to be thinking about it when you're going at it. It's like a big undertaking, and you may want to tackle it and go into it too much. All you got to do is start from the outside and build your way in, and then start from the inside and weld your way out, okay? That's the easiest way to describe it. I've done it before in a number of other videos where I've talked about that. Don't overthink it. I found it's a lot easier to make it in 100 pieces than to try to make it in 2, okay? If it takes you 100 pieces to weld it all together, that's a bit exaggerating it now, but my whole idea is a lot easier to weld 2 pieces of metal together to get a shape than it is to turn around and try to manipulate it to get it to go 3 or 4 different ways. That's a skill in itself and a timely manner. If you want to just, if you're restoring an old car, fixing up an old car, it's a simple process. You don't need no specialty tools. It's just a grinder and a welder. That's basically it, okay? This process, like I said earlier, it's much the same for almost any roof. Roofs are usually designed as a skin laid over a drip rail. That's part of the body. Sometimes the drip rail is welded onto the inner structure, separate piece again, and then this is the roof skin is welded on it. For the most part, they're all the same. Some got really fancy ones where it comes up and it wraps around the top edge of it and all that type of stuff. They're a bit tricky as well. Usually I just make them, I don't worry about the rolled edge, and I just make the lip, right? What else can I cover? But the same process, like I said, just take your time with it. Cut everything out, look at how it's built, okay? And just duplicate how it was built before, and you'll find it a lot tidier, a lot easier. Like, this is not going to take a lot of filler now to straighten up. And, like, you know, I got nice crisp edges. You know, that's always the issue. Like, back here in this corner, where the corner just transitioned. Like, down here, this is butt welded here, and this is an overlap here. So, you know, I can't even notice the transition from the two of it. It's overlapped there, and there's a butt weld here, and that's the original panel there. So, it works out really well, right? So, you just got to take your time with it. Most of your time is going to be spent making the pieces and figuring it out and fitting it. Once you get it figured out, it will come together fast, okay? This here, once I got everything figured out and made, it just like bump, 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 it all came together. And because the way I done it, I made it into sections. I've done the inside first and did the outside first. Some people will probably sit here now and try to jam a piece of metal up there and try to weld it on to the lip that. And you have a real thick lip here, or they'll come down here and they try to weld in this edge here, and, like, you know, it really gets to be a nightmare. Just duplicate what is done from the factory with making pieces and just have them so that they just fits onto another panel, right? But that's basically it. A lot of you have asked about the drip rails, about replacing drip rails and roofs, and hopefully this one here is helpful. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. I'll answer all of them if I possibly can get to them. So, you know, Anyway, that's it for this one. I hope the tips were good, and until next time. Here comes the inspector. Coming in to check on with you? Yes, boy. Hank?